right in the middle, let's say, of the project. So it's quite timing to have this event for what is coming next. So EPICAP, as I said, is EU-funded project, Asylum Migration Integration Fund, 3 years, 12 partners, 13 associated partners. And just very briefly, for those of you who don't know it, to tell you that at the core of this project, we have 6 community of practices, or COPs, which are basically multi-actor local groups coming from different sectors, public sector, private sector, third sector, so migrant-led organizations, civil society, NGOs, but also citizens themselves of different backgrounds who were willing to join to look at what is happening in the territory when it comes to migrant integration, refugee integration, and inclusion, to understand what our priority needs, to understand what practices have been deployed, if they're working well or not. And with that, to learn from one another. During this summer, they've been very busy visiting each other across Europe to learn from other practices. And now they're about to embark in what we call social experimentation. It's part of a social innovation process in which you test on a small scale what you want to later on, if it is success, to make bigger and to make sustainable. So as part of this, we are also organizing these thematic webinars in which we have the opportunity to discuss not only internally, but with external experts, with other projects that have been also working in similar topics, to understand how better we can design these integrated services that the COPs are going to test locally. So this is the agenda for today. And we have 4 keynote speakers around the 2 topics, let's say. So the first 2 speakers will focus on unaccompanied minors from a research perspective, a policy perspective, and from another project. We have also been developing some tools and delivering some training activities. And in the second part, we will focus on the particular aspect of migrant women and girls, also having a presentation that first is more from EU to local, and then a concrete case, good practice in Greece. We will have some time for Q&A. We will have time for debate later. So while I invite you to be mute right now, I will invite you to use the chat during the different interventions so that we can address your questions, and also after the 4 interventions to have a bit of a debate. So don't hesitate if you have any question on how you would reformulate what speakers are saying to your local context, or if there is something that you wish to share from your experience, please feel free to raise your hand as well, and we will give you the floor. So this is as the introduction, and now, without further ado, what I'm going to do is to present the first speaker, which I'm going to also just a second to put your presentation. So I'm happy to welcome Juan Eduardo Ortiz Lopez, Research Fellow Curie Fellow funded by the EU Path to EU, Pathways to Social Inclusion for Unaccompanied Minors in the European Union, and you are coming from the Institute of Migration Studies of the University of Comillas in Madrid. So I will be, as I said, sharing your screen for you, Juan Eduardo, and welcome. Thanks for being with us today. Please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation as well. Well, I would like to start by saying that even though the name of this talk has to do with the name of my project, I will try to expand a little bit more on what are the interests for researchers, and at the same time trying to apply or to tell you a little bit about what my project is about. But in general, is to have a sort of screening of the situation that we are currently experiencing in the European Union, but also that has it, I mean, it dates back to long ago, especially from 2015 with the so-called crisis, the refugee crisis during those years. But it has still continued throughout this decade. So first of all, I would like to start with some key facts that may help situate the phenomenon and the current landscape and the scale uh, of the situation. I don't know if you are hearing me well because I'm wearing this, you know, see? Great.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you can go to slide one, Patricia, please. Well, we are going to analyze a little bit today these key facts. Also, if unaccompanied minors, or if they are minors or actually children, this double status problem. I will also here introduce some differences between the Mediterranean regime and the Central and Northern European framework for interventions with unaccompanied minors. Later, barriers to inclusion that we can see across the European context. And I will tell you a little bit of my project and see how some keys for integration in the long run could be applicable, not because of my project, but because of what I have read up to the moment, what I have seen also up to the moment. So we can start with slide one, Patricia, with the next one, with unaccompanied minors. As we can see across Europe, more than 20,000 unaccompanied minors were registered in 2024, and most arrived through at different scales, at different flows, but in different parts also of the southern part of Europe, especially Spain, Italy, Greece, Belgium, and Germany, and with Spain and Italy acting as the primary entry points for these young people. Roughly 9 out of 10 are boys aged between 15 and 17, but girls face higher protection risks, especially because of trafficking and gender-based violence, as you can see here. But according to FEANSA, around 1 in 5 unaccompanied minors experiences homelessness or instability in care, which implies also that the legal frameworks, in a way, are answering to a fragmented reality, a fragmented protection system that is not able to help continue, protection to what the migration status is. I will explain that a little bit later. So the next slide talks about the unaccompanied children, also unaccompanied minors, also as children. So this double status has been argued quite a lot in research because on the one hand, these youngsters and children are treated as children, but in some of the cases are also treated as criminals. We can see that this final part, in terms of the decriminalization, also has to do with their migrant status as well. But let's start with the international law. Usually, international law actually demands that children must be protected all over the world, especially after the UN Convention, the CRC. Uh, and that implies that the children will benefit from child-specific protections, normally associated to their migratory status in this case, but also into other cases as well where children need some sort of intervention from the part of the state. And access to education and healthcare, and right to family reunification. Those are part of the directives also from, within the European framework. But at the same time, the national systems usually consider the children mainly as a minor. Being a minor implies two things, in my opinion. First of all, a migrant itself. So it's much more powerful to be a migrant rather than to be a children. So they are normally treated as irregular migrants on the one hand. And in the media as well, they are normally criminalized as being, young delinquents and among many other social issues that we can see that occur in reality. So normally in the national systems, they are treated primarily as migrants, as I was saying. So they are subjected to migration policies where the regulatory, or let's say the migratory status, is much more important than the protection of their childhood, often detained or deported, and limited access to services. Those are mainly one of the consequences of what happens in national systems. I would say that, anyways, my research is quite restricted, so I cannot actually generalize for the whole Europe or the whole world, let's say, because actually in America, uh, the corridors are absolutely different, and the way in which they operate are absolutely different, even in gender balance as well. So if we go to our next slide, here we can see, I hope that this is not going to, in a way, be too much information for you, but I think that I needed to show you this because what I have seen um, in these two regimes, we can see, I mean, at the very beginning, for me, it was difficult to know that Europe was actually working in two different models, not just one unified model. That normally the countries in the southern part of Europe tend to have a type of policy creation, but also at the same time, a type of intervention that is absolutely different from what happens in the central and northern part of Europe, where normally children are already regularized and their migratory status is different. So, but in general, if we look at the table here, we can see that the positions from the Southern European migration regime, like Italy, Spain, Greece, uh, are normally the entry points for the European Union. However, the central and northern part are the secondary destinations after children have already entered the Schengen space, for example. So, in the one hand, Southern Europe has to be aware of all the quantity, or let's say the amount of arrivals that get into the country through land, but also through the sea, and they are always pushing the reception systems, especially, for example, in the case of Spain, in Canarias, in the Canary Island, sorry, and also at the same time, let's say we would say that now there are new routes that are implementing, like for example towards Mallorca, and also Andalusia is always under pressure, Ceuta and Melilla as well. The same happens in Italy as well from the Libyan population that goes and crosses the sea, the Mediterranean. But normally, what I have seen is that there are a lot of missing children, and they finally appear in the northern parts of Europe, of the continent. So, but they are fewer because they have already entered the country. I mean, the country, so the space through the entry points like Spain and Italy. That implies also a different position when the policy creation is, on hand. In the case of Spain, they have a lot of expertise. The other day I was talking to Patricia that there is a lot of expertise in terms of how we can create policies uh, which are driven, crisis driven, and also reactive to the different fluxes, to the different flows. Uh, but it's not absolutely concentrated in one multi-level policy, okay? Because it's always answering towards the phenomenon. I mean, in terms of what's happening every summer, who's crossing, how many children are there, etc. However, in the northern and central part, we can see more integrated, uh, but this is ideal, I have to say. It's not completely um, real because there is fragmentation as well, but at least we can see a more multi-level integration policy. Also, governance is different because, at least in the Southern European systems, predominantly national level responses are occurring, but there is a heavy reliance on NGOs and the local authorities. This is something that happens also in Latin America, in my experience as a researcher in South America, because of the same reason. I mean, the influx is not completely, I mean, people have to react during the crisis. Um, Also, there is a more multi-level governance, let's say in this case as well, in the case of the central northern part, but it's fragmented anyways. In the case that I'm studying, which is Belgium, there is also a fragmentation because every part of the country has its own way of answering to the problem and to the issue. So they, anyways, there is a sort of, uh, let's say, inclusion of also the local authorities and the local actors because of the local policies. For example, the difference between Flanders, Wallonia, and Brussels, which are different as well, in which how they treat the same children in their own, jurisdictional framework, let's say. And integration measures normally tend to be weak in terms of access to education, also professional training or housing. And in the case of the central northern part, it's rather semi-mandatory or mandatory, especially in the case of the language programs. Okay, so as to support that are created to support inclusion. Also, the reception of unaccompanied minors, in the case of the Southern European migration regime it's overstretched. Actually, it's saturated, normally during summers, especially. And there is no, or there is limited follow-up in each case because of the conditions that children arrive, and also the amount of people working in the reception center. So they are really over demanded. And in the central northern part, the comprehensive reception systems are normally coordinated by a central institution, but according to this division or this divide between the same country policies. Participation and co-design. I think this is something that I would like to, even though I think that I have just a few minutes, uh, I would like to go further. So I would say that this is important as well for stability and the opportunities for inclusion that I will now specify. And some common challenges in the Southern European models are that they have a reactive governance, resource constraints, irregular inflow, lack of coordination between child protection and migration systems. And in the case of the Central Northern Europe, it's much more complex. There are more standards to complement, a more general, let's say, mm, directive or let's say a law legislation. If we move to the other, to go quickly, Patricia, because I'm a little bit late. So, in general, what we can see is that there is a fragmentation between the systems, unequal access to services across Europe as well, strained support. So, local services are under resourced, but also inadequately trained because of lack of resources, not because of, of lack of, let's say, being in a way motivated to do it. It's just rather it has to do with the resources. Discontinuity after 18, which is also quite complex after age estimation, because that's also a complex issue in unaccompanied minors. So this discontinuity for me starts from the very beginning of the age. I mean, when they start measuring the age and estimating the age, and also a limited child participation, which is going to affect how the voices of children are listened and how marginalized they finally are in the intervention processes. If we go to the other one, please. So, what are some of the keys for integration, for a long run integration? A child's rights-based training, but also I would say that also a sort of epistemology based on child rights. Uh, Also, multi-actor partnerships. I think that what you are doing in Epic Cup is quite useful because one of the most, let's say, or what it has provided a little bit of a solution is this multi-actor partnership, especially in joint cases management. So how they actually construct a pattern and how we can deal with that, especially from a multi-perspective. I mean, let's say from a multi-factor perspective. And finally, a participatory approach where participatory environments allow for the construction of solutions for the same children, but constructed by the same children and also constructed by the same practitioners as well. If we go to the other one, well, in my project, I will try to approach to this participation through living labs, which is bringing together professionals, children, also and researchers, also as stakeholders. Co-design. The idea is to create policies together as part of the also later the implementation, where we will try to test some solutions. The core ideas here is that participation is key, also interdisciplinarity and practice-based learning. So I guess theory must be informal practice as well. If we go to the other one, sorry, sorry.
Sorry, there was a mic open. Sorry for the interruption.
Vale. So one of the things to end my presentation should be that we have to move from where are they to where they can belong. It implies knowing or recognizing that all of them have a potential, all of them have capacities that we are missing out. I mean, in my case, I think that the re-traumatization as a researcher is a situation that shouldn't be done. So that's why what we have to think is about the future, knowing their past experiences, but what actually they want to do in the future, because they are already here in Europe and how they are going to construct their own pathways is key. But they cannot be alone. So that's why care is so important. They need to have support for their unique experiences. So that implies interdisciplinarity, but also community. Um, Intervention shouldn't be also from the practitioners towards the children. It should be co-constructed also by the same communities, those who are involved, those who are the receivers, the end users, which normally are called, but more a community creation because they already know what happens in the local context and they know what they miss, they know what they need. So at least not only the care system, but also researchers should know that the accompaniment of the kids is mainly towards the creation of their own agency, the creation of their own pathways to inclusion, not our provision of pathways, you know. So that's mainly what I wanted to say today. So here you can find the references in the next slide. You can pass it on anyways, Patricia, if you want, so people can have a look at all those pieces of information that I took from evidence to present today. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Juan, for this presentation. Research-oriented, but very well-funded, with a lot of lessons, recommendations already. Is the path to EU, pathway to social inclusion for unaccompanied minors in Europe, for those that are some attendees that have been joining a bit later after I presented you. Indeed, after this meeting, we will produce a small article with key points from all speakers, with key takeaways, and we will make available the materials, the resources, and we will send an email to all participants. We are now 45 people connected, so that if anybody is interested in to dig deep into this concrete topic, or that can reach out to you, as you mentioned, and again, for those of you that connected during the intervention, this is an ongoing project funded by the Marie Curie Fellowship, and you've been, for what you said, like compiling the information, so all the research that you have presented, and then you will be also embarking, as we will, in a pickup into all more this social experimentation with the living labs, place-based, multi-actor approach that you presented. So we will be really eager to receive more news from you, Juan, that we can pass on to publish, but also for the partners that we said, for the community of practices. They're in 6 countries, but unaccompanied minors are very important to all of them. But I could, for instance, mention the COP, the Committee of Practice in Italy, where there will be a particular focus on the unaccompanied minors in the city of Brescia. So all your inputs on this will be really welcome. I think we don't have any question yet in the chat. I encourage you, if you want to ask something, it can be now or later on. We will also have sometimes to continue the debate. But I take like two key points. Let's say you spoke about reconciliation between being a children protection law and the migration status. This reconciliation, you also spoke about perhaps another reconciliation could be the southern model, which is more ready and set up for the for the crisis management in a rapid and perhaps more flexible way, while in the North system is more looking at the longer term. There is multi-level, but sometimes this is also complex because of that multi-level. And then something that perhaps we can discuss later during the debate, but for us is really important, and you specifically mentioned the participation on co-design, how in some countries it's more limited to allow the migrant minors themselves to be part of this co-design of the integration processes, while in other countries the greater institutional stability allow this participation. And I see one hand raised by Madalena. Good morning, Madalena. Would you like to say something, ask something?
Yes, I don't know if it's better now or later. I just have few thoughts to share.
Yeah, please go ahead. We have a couple of minutes, briefly, but yes, we have a couple of minutes.
Very brief. I just want to thank you very much, Juan, because it was really, really interesting. So I'm from an NGO working also with unaccompanied minors in Brescia, and we're partner of EPICAP project. And I think that it's very interesting what you were saying between the double status problem, because it's really what we are facing here. And also the fragmentation between system that you were speaking about. Also, I think that is due to the way that these youngs perceive themselves. So we are hosting many of them coming from the Maghreb area. So they're crossing the Mediterranean. And for them, the way they perceive themselves, crossing the Mediterranean means for many of them also to crossing the line between childhood and adulthood. So this is also something that we have to take care about when we work with them, because it's not that they always want to be treated like child, but in the same time, they are very young. And anyway, they are in this shifted system. So you are more a migrant or more a child. You are more a minor or you are more an illegal migrant. And this is something that is like a bit schizophrenic in the way also the services approach to them. And also I want to stress that what we can witness is that there is exactly what you were saying, this unequal access to services. And this is evident, and it is the result of the institutionalized racism that we witness every day. Because, for example, the center where the unaccompanied minors are hosted would never be used to place a 16-year-old Italian guy that was forcibly removed from his Italian family. So the first service that these guys or girls receive from our government at local or national level is discriminatory, because an Italian guy would never be placed in the same not very good center. And they meet a racist system since the first moment. And this significantly, on my point of view and my experience, affect the relation between them, the system, and the NGOs that now has to rebuild the sense of belonging instead of exclusion, of care and protection instead of expulsions. So I also think that what we should think together is also what we offer as the first end. And this is something that is not presenting us in our best way. And this is affecting so much the way they perceive the system at national, local, the NGOs. So it's something that, yes, we should all, I think, work on together. But okay, 2 minutes are gone, but thank you very much. It was really, really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mada. I don't know if you want to react. You have observed that you mentioned their own transition into adulthood because of this journey that they take and the fragmentation of the system and the institutionalized racism in which they face and they receive the services, and how this needs to be also taken into account, because we are speaking about children, teenagers without their parents. Yes, Juan.
Actually, I cannot agree more with Madalena. I agree with everything. And I think that one of the things that we have to provide now is a common reaction, first of all, I would say, I mean, from the European authorities, let's say. And because especially this double status that we were talking about is not very clear for anyone, especially because there is always this doubt of being a teenager. And that's why those age estimation techniques have been applied. But normally they are all criticized because they cannot finally rely on you cannot finally rely on tests like the wisdom tooth, for example. How can you finally rely on that type of test? So that implies a lot to the kid as well, because that will imply if it is an adult kid, he or she is an adult or a child. And that's complicated because you, as a child, you don't have no agency there. I mean, there is no form of proving you are a kid. So you are under an authority who will determine if you are a kid or not. I mean, so it's not yourself the one who's doing it. So that's one thing, just one little thing that it's at the very beginning of the support services that will persist in time. And it's been criticized for more than 12 years up to now, as you can see in the references I used today. So there is evidence that those tests are not applicable, but they still do it. And that is what Madalena is saying. That's institutional racism. Because who can be applied? I mean, to whom we can apply those rules? To Italians, to Europeans, to only to those kids that come from the Maghreb area? Those are some of the issues. And also this transition between childhood and adulthood, definitely these are kids that are quite, especially in men, because in women is a different story, but at least in men, they are quite more adventurous. The results from research tell that finally those kids do it for adventure, and they want to have a different life. And that also is part of a sort of Ulysses trip, and sort of Ulysses journey, where they are trying to find their own, heroism, let's say. And that's very interesting, and how also the states react when also they are presented with these kids. Because some of them can be confused as adults as well because of this adventurous way of living life, So how child they are, and how can you finally determine the limits between what we determined as a child or not? But what we have to understand is that under the international protection laws, all of them will be children or treated as children, and they have rights to access to education, access to health, access to a better life, between many other things.
Thank you, Juan. I see, Thomas, you have also your hand. If we can take it briefly now, otherwise later during the debate, just to...
Yeah, if you want me to hold on, I can wait until we have more space.
Okay, so let's do that, because we have actually the other speaker coming. It's really complementing what Juan has been presenting so far. And thank you again, Juan. Apologies, I put a wrong link. Apparently, I think that Marisol solved it, but we will be circulating again all the materials after it. But now I would like to welcome our second speaker, Ursa Rekbar, from the Legal Center for the Protection of Human Rights and the Environment. There you are. In Slovenia, you are a member of the COAST project, coming out of age, focused on supported unaccompanied minors as they transition to adulthood as well, and looking more particularly to the guardianship and the care service provider. So it's a different perspective, and we are looking forward to hear what you have to say and to present. Ursa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for giving us this opportunity to present our project. I will share the screen now, but just in case my internet connection gets a little bit loppy, I will turn the camera off. I apologize, and I will turn it on again. Don't worry for the questions part. We are very yes. We are very happy to be able to present this project. Let me share the screen. Please just let me know. Can you see?
Yeah, I'll tell you. It's coming, so you have just to put it in the full mode. Perfect. Now it is. Okay. We see it.
Thank you very much again for inviting us today. I will focus on presenting our COAST project. It's abbreviation of My Coming of Age Story. The COAST project is financed by AMIF, the EU AMIF fund, and we have been implementing it now. I hear some voices, and we have been implementing it now. And what I want to focus today is on the legal and psychological support for unaccompanied minors, specifically in the time frame when they do transition to adulthood, as this is a very vulnerable and very important time for unaccompanied children. First, a little bit about COAST. The COAST project contains of 5 partners that operate in 6 EU countries. So the project is being simultaneously implemented in Italy, Slovakia, Greece, and Poland, as well as France and Slovenia. And at the same time, KIND, which implements the project both in Slovakia and Belgium, whereas in Belgium, what they do is they make sure that the regional aspect of the project is elevated and that the results and findings of the project are disseminated and enhanced on a regional level in order to kind of ensure a broader impact of the project activities. The general objective of the project is improving the support given to legal guardians in order to ensure that unaccompanied minors are ensured a prompt access to their rights that they are entitled to, and in order to assist their transition to adulthood. So the whole project was designed in a way to first see what are, through the activities, what are the good practices which can be identified in different member states, as the system, which was very in the beginning of the project established, as the system in the member states really differentiates significantly. So first, with the research phase, we wanted to identify the good practices that certain member states are in order to see how we can use that knowledge in the coming months of the implementation. We also collected, because in order to do to implement this in the best possible way, it was very important for us to hear both from legal guardians and other support experts who work with children, unaccompanied children through the transition to the adulthood, as well as the children themselves. Therefore, we had this phase when we collected the information through focus groups and semi-structured interviews from both relevant stakeholders and children themselves in order to enhance their voices, not only in the project, but in the results, and to ensure that the solutions that we propose or bring are in line with their needs. 2 studies visits were also conducted in line with the project, one to Italy and France, and the second one in France, in order to see, for us to have this opportunity to see the actual results and different systems in practice. And based on this whole experience of research and collection of information and study visits, we identified several needs and gaps, and we tried to address them through developing and delivering the training models, both on national levels and the regional level. We are also in the preparation of a practical toolkit that will help legal guardians through navigating the phase of transition to adulthood. And we are also right now in the pilot phase, in which we provide additional technical support to legal guardians, and I will explain a little bit better what that is in the following presentations. One thing that we will do at the end of the project is that based on all of the lessons that we have learned and good practices that we have either identified or established, we plan to make general recommendations how to improve the support to legal guardians who are key players in transition to adulthood for unaccompanied children. And those recommendations will be presented also at our final event in Brussels at the conclusion of the project. So during this presentation, I really wanted to focus on two key aspects. enhancing the needs and the voices of both legal guardians and unaccompanied children in order to highlight through those gaps and needs, not only which were detected, but also how we then gradually discuss them and address them through the project implementation. And first, I really want to focus on the identifying needs and gaps of legal guardians. These were identified through focus groups and semi-structured interviews, as I previously mentioned. First, we have to reiterate something that is probably very clear to everyone, but still we need to always remember that there is a vast difference in how not only participating but all other EU states approach the legal guardianship and how they implement it, what is their legislative context. However, through the semi-structured interviews and through the research that we have done, we have found that a lot of the countries struggle and have very similar, if not the same, general gaps that need to be addressed when it comes to legal guardianship. And the ones that I'm going to present are some of the ones that I wanted to highlight through the presentation, some of the ones that we have identified through these activities. One of the most pressing concerns identified through all participating countries is first the shortage of guardians. We saw that despite of various variation in legal system and social welfare structure, this is a recurring challenge, and that the demand for guardians far exceeds the available supply. And this shortage has profound implications, particularly for children themselves, as they do not receive the needed support and services of legal guardians. This lack of sufficient guardians then undermines the effectiveness of child protection frameworks, leading to, for example, delays in support, inconsistencies in care, and limited oversight in critical decision-making processes. Very connected to this issue is the issue of inadequate financial reimbursement for their work. And this was really consistently highlighted in interviews with legal guardians. Across several countries, guardianship itself still remains largely voluntary, or really like they get minimal compensation for it. And the financial support that they do get for their work normally covers or doesn't even cover the basic expenses associated with fulfilling their duties. In addition to that, one thing that we identified is really the absence of a structured monitoring mechanism that would oversee the guardian's activities. Many national systems, for example, including ours in Slovenia, really lacks like clear guidelines on how guardians should report their work, or it doesn't have established mechanisms that would enable like regular oversight. Here, one of the exceptions was Greece, which we learned, where there is a highly demanding reporting system in place. However, in most other countries, no formal requirement exists for guardians to systematically report their activities, or for other actors involved in child protection to provide feedback on guardianship practices. In addition, children themselves are rarely included in monitoring process or even informed about their right to provide feedback on their guardian's performance. Here, what we need to know is that establishing a structured oversight mechanism would ensure that guardians fulfill their responsibilities effectively, and that the best interest of the child remains at the center of their work. And involving children in the evaluation process could empower them by giving them a say in the quality of care they receive, reinforcing a child-centered approach within the guardianship system that we really try to enhance during the project activities. this child-centered approach. And you know, this monitoring oversight mechanism would also allow us to identify sooner the gaps and challenges in guardianship, and then then the authorities responsible could then pursue very specific and targeted improvements that the system needs. However, at the same time, we need to know that such a monitoring system, if it's too rigid and if it demands too much from the guardians, can have a deferral effect, as this is mostly voluntary work, and additional work needs to be properly compensated. There was also what we also found out is that in the majority of the states there is really a lack of clear rules on the role of guardians, and a lot of times because of this lack of clear rules it comes to overlapping competencies. So here the need for very clear legislative, not only legislative framework, but also additional guidelines, SOPs, was really reiterated, as often the lack of clear rules then is followed then by confusion, overlapping competencies, and then in the end gaps in responsibility. However, in addition to that, and clearly connected to that, is that in some of the states where the policies were clearly established and the legislation was clearly established, there was a very big gap between policy and practice, meaning that even when a legislative framework was clearly established, the practice did not follow it, and that children clearly did not have access to the rights that they have. One thing that was very common in all of the countries was this lack of structured and systematic planning for young adults, especially when it comes to transition to adulthood. Then what I want to also present to you is the other side, which is the side and the voice of children when it comes to transition to adulthood, and what we learn from speaking to them, what they have reiterated here in general, what we again can let's say highlight is that when it comes to not only when it comes to legal guardianship, but also when it comes to the transition to adulthood, there is a general lack in legislative frameworks and effective practices when it comes to transition to adulthood that would then follow the legislation. For example, a country like Slovenia does not have any legislative rules on transition of adulthood, and and in practice, children when they are of age basically lose all of support, although they desperately need it. So one of the things that we found is that across all of the countries, there is like a shared and fundamental necessity in the adequate preparation for transition to adulthood. This process requires proactive measures to be taken well in advance to ensure a stable and secure future for young individuals. Key steps include not only securing an improved or permanent resident status. However, there needs to be provided legal stability, access to opportunities. However, this is not enough. Also, the psychological aspects of adulthood really need to be addressed. One thing that we really wanted to reiterate is that a smooth transition into adulthood is really fundamental to securing a stable future, and fosters real integration into the host societies. And this transition must begin with guaranteeing a residence permit for young adults, as this is like the foundation for accessing essential rights and services, including education, employment, and social support. And while each national system responds really differently to these needs, there is a general consensus that without legal recognition, many young people face risks of exploitation, exclusion, and marginalization. One thing that we did, what the kids did highlight during this, and what is something that a key takeaway is that the ongoing role of guardians or legal representatives and other care professionals is really crucial, even beyond 18 years old, even beyond when the child is of age. This was really highlighted by children that they need the additional support of people who were working with them previously and who they trust. And what we found during our research phase is that across different countries, the results are that while the formal responsibilities of these caretakers or care professionals in a lot of countries end when the child becomes of age, these people still serve as vital reference points and often offer guidance and emotional support to young adults, even as they navigate their adulthood, although this is no longer their, let's say, official role. One of the challenges that was really stressed during the activities is housing instability that children often face when they become of age. There is really, the findings revealed that the availability of dedicated facilities for young adults is truly essential, and that these spaces could provide a transitional phase when they can then gradually develop independence while still receiving necessary support. And ensuring such accommodation basically allows young adults to assume responsibility in a structured and secure environment, and this clearly reduces the risk of homelessness and instability. And then finally, the building relationship is something that remains crucial and yet often very challenging aspect of integration. Here, what we see is that meaningful exchanges between children and members of host communities through different activities such as sports or recreational activities and other social interactions can really have a significant positive impact on the children. So encouraging such engagement really fosters inclusion, mutual understanding, and a sense of belonging. And ultimately supports the long-term well-being of children as they establish their new lives in the host communities.
Ursa, if because we don't have that many minutes left, if you can move to the lessons learned and
yes. So based on the lessons learned, sorry, I was a bit late. So based on the lessons learned, something that we tried to do is we had 4 goals that we then tried to do. 4 goals that then we try to reach through our activities. One is clearly fostering cooperation among all actors, legal guardians themselves, as well as other actors, provide external support services, raise public awareness about the issues of legal guardianship, as well as legal guardianship, as well as transition to adulthood. And we wanted really to advocate for a more harmonized approach, as we see that one of the key issues is the fact that that there is different structures in different countries. So we try to do this because through legal support and psychological support. And when it comes to legal support, how we offered this enhancements was both through training models, because we see that there is a big lack of knowledge or trainings when it comes to legal guardianships on the legal issues connected to legal guardianships. So the training models were structured in a way to address these key identified issues. And then through technical support, where, for example, now through the pilot phase, we offer additional legal support to legal guardians that is specifically focused on transition to adulthood. And for example, my organization will provide additional informational sessions to children who will soon transit to adulthood, in order to ensure that the kids and guardians have the information needed. The same when it comes to psychological support. We try to focus and we try to focus through our training models on enhancing the support not only to children but also to guardians, because guardians really need tools for self-care, as the guardianship is very it can be very stressful, and they need to really there is a big need in reinforcing their communication skills, cultural sensitivity, capacity to manage this really complex relationship that they have as legal guardians with their unaccompanied children. Guardians, as they say, they stay a key reference figures for youth, and therefore there is essential that they have the support needed, and that that themselves are well support this process both, competently, and that we try to avoid burnout as much as possible. And through then how we try to through activities give additional psychological support both to unaccompanied and separate children and legal guardians is basically through enriching and supporting peer-to-peer systems that would help legal guardians have additional support among themselves and among different stakeholders. And I must reiterate that different countries participating in the project will tackle this differently. But for example, in some countries, they will draft ethical codes that will further support the works of legal guardians. And in some, we will establish mentorship programs in order to connect children to more to the host communities. In addition, we will prepare a practical toolkit that will focus specifically on the role of guardians in facilitating the transition to adulthood. And we will also, as I said previously, provide recommendations for improving the support to guardians. And through this, we will basically advocate for a more harmonized EU approach based on the lessons learned through the project. I really apologize for being a bit let's say long. I'm sorry. I hope this was still helpful for you all, and I hope that and I'm available for any questions. My camera is on, so you can see I'm still here.
Thank you very much, Ursa. Don't worry. I know, unfortunately, we have some time constraint, but I can imagine that it is difficult to explain all these complex challenges in just 15 minutes. But thank you very much for bringing this perspective. It's about unaccompanied minors, and you mentioned again several challenges as Juan started to do in the morning, but then also looking at the concrete role of the guardians. As an essential support, that, as you said, there is shortages, there is not enough support, there is not enough funding, fragmentation services. And I think that a very important point that I got from you, and that speaking with many practitioners, I've been hearing a lot, and it's stress, the need for the self-care and the support, so that they are also not totally overwhelmed and burn out, and eventually they are not able to help those that are in need, because they also really need the help and the support. So thanks again to Ursa, and we will be also sharing all the materials. I think there is not a question yet in the chat, but perhaps we can go back to the one from Thomas. Just to mention, you may remember, we are adjusting a bit the agenda, but we still have another hour to go. We have focused on the unaccompanied minors and the legal guardians so far. So before we moved into the migrant women and girls presentations, and then finally a debate all together. If there is concrete questions for the presentations around unaccompanied minors and the legal and psychological support for the guardians. Otherwise, perhaps, I don't know if Thomas, now is a good moment for you.
Yes, thank you.
To say what, or to ask what you wanted to do before.
Yeah, sorry, my camera, it's not collaborating with Teams, so I cannot connect it. So apologies for that. Thanks for both presentations. I would just feel obliged to say that some sentences from the Polish perspective, because I feel it's important to recognize or to make you aware that in Poland we actually have two humanitarian crises ongoing. One is linked with a full-scale war and refugees who comes to Poland from Ukraine. and many of them are minors and childs, unprotected and protected by their mothers. And this is the big topic, of course, because of the numbers behind it. But I would like to draw your attention to another crisis, which is in the shade of the first one, which is ongoing on the Polish-Belarusian border, which is dramatically caused by the way of response of the Polish state to the humanitarian crisis, and in particular, peril to the minors and kids who are the victims of the situation in here, because in fact, the system is not recognizing them as a minors at all. So the first issue we are facing on the Polish-Belarus border, it's the acknowledging the fact that the persons who are not always traveling with their documents, or the documents are faked, and so on and so forth. We know it from many other borders across the Europe, are not recognized as a kids, and those they are exposed to the risks of traffickers and any kind of abuse. They are because they are not protected by the systems. And this is something very very dramatic, maybe not in the very big scale, but in very dramatic facts, because the only way of proving to the minors who are crossing the border that they are still under 18 years old are obligatory wrist X-ray, which is the method of establishing their age, which is not calibrated to the person from non-European countries. And in 90%, this is educated guess, not the exact number, but in 90% of the cases, the persons who are checked in this method are not recognized as a minors, and they are outside of any kind of a system. Just one example of the facts in here. Last year, we found out 20 minors who, by the border guards, was placed in the house of a priest, because there is no there is no safe place for them at all, recognized and supervised and monitored by the state. So I just want to bring this topic, which is maybe on the margin, looking at the numbers and the scale of the process, but this is also about the double standards for the unaccompanied minors from Ukraine and from non-European countries, or those who are just crossing the Polish-Belarusian border. And the second one needs to be also highlighted, and I would love you to be aware of what's going on, because the efforts of many organizations who are trying to protect the kids and the childs in here are in a very dramatic. So thank you for that. I'm sorry, this is not a question, but I just wanted to bring it out also for your awareness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, indeed, it doesn't need to be a questions. We really appreciate that anybody is bringing also their own experiences and comments. And thank you for raising awareness about the particular case in the border, Poland and Belarus. And it is very dramatic, what you said, like around 90% of those crossing fall out of the they are not recognized because of perhaps the lack of documentation, and therefore the fallout of the supportive system, which indeed is very dangerous. I don't know if Juan or Ursa, you have any reaction to that, if this is something that you have come across, perhaps, as Thomas said, there are different scenarios. We have Juan, you've been mentioning more the Mediterranean, because perhaps in terms of number is higher, but of course there are different realities. So just as you have a quick reaction to that you wanted to say.
Yeah, actually, I agree with Thomas as well. We know also that through the Balkans, there is also another corridor that is quite complex as well, and most of them should go to the northern part of Europe. So we know that there is a big amount of children that are traveling towards the northern part of Europe, being unaccompanied and without being registered before as an entry point. So that may happen as well. Now, I think that it's, I mean, I can talk about the closer, let's say, context that I have, which is Spain. And of course, things are different here, because the type of migrants, or the accompanying minors, come here are normally from Africa or from the Arab world or something more related to that part of the globe, let's say. But it doesn't. But also, Spain has received a lot of Ukrainian children, maybe not unaccompanied, but the treatment has been different. So there is also racism in the way in which we intervene and the way in which we receive the unaccompanied minors. It's not the same receiving um, someone who's kind of very poor in their own country of origin, but also has shown it, in its skin, in his or her skin. So that is a mark that we cannot avoid, and it normally applies also in the way you are treated. I mean, if you are African or if you are European, it's a different story. So there is also racism in the way they are treated here. I mean, I can talk about Spain. I cannot talk about other contexts. But in general, that's what we are seeing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juan. Ursa, I don't know if you want to react to that. Otherwise, there is also a comment about adulthood that is directed to you.
Yes, I was just writing to Maddalena, so I would actually prefer to reflect Maddalena's comment. I completely agree with Maddalena's comment that we need to really think about the concept of adulthood from a multicultural perspective. Absolutely agree. This is why during all the project implementation, we really highlight that any kind of additional actions when it comes to legislative changes or structuring the process of transition to adulthood in our countries has to follow a child-centered approach. Without the voices of children, without understanding the concept of their cultural perspectives, of their personal experience, of the expectations that that are brought onto them as migrant children, we will not be effective in supporting them through the needs and challenges that they are facing while in the host communities. So thank you very much for this comment.
Thank you very much again, Ursa and Juan, and for everybody for bringing your ideas and your comments. We are going to close for the moment the part of unaccompanied minors, and now we're going to hear two other interventions that reflect to another intersectionality when it comes to migrant population, which is those realities faced by migrant women and girls. And first, I have the pleasure to invite Frohard Foya from the European Network of Migrant Women, who is going to present inclusion of migrant women from local to EU level based on your solid experience as a migrant women-led organization that has been running a good number of projects already. So we are looking forward to hear from you, Foya. I think you're connected. I cannot see you. I don't know if your camera is working.
Yes, hello, good morning. You can see me, right?
Yes, good morning, Frohard.
Good morning. My network is a little bit shaky, so if you can't hear me or see me, please let me know so I can turn off my camera and speak, if that's okay.
I will.
Thank you for inviting me to speak today at this event. I will give you, first of all, a very brief overview of who we are as a network, and then kind of outline some of the projects that we are involved on how to build the capacity of migrant women and also to support migrant women at different capacities. So the European Network of Migrant Women is a secular, non-political NGO. Our office is based in Brussels. But our staff members are all over Europe. We are like scattered in different European countries. Our network is actually built from memberships. So we have over 50 member organizations in 23 European member states. We help shape social policy and design action programs addressing migrant women's specific needs. Through our work, we try to visualize the lived realities of migrant women and girls and create safe spaces where migrant women come to heal, exchange, learn, and co-create their own life and stories. Migrant women and girls face multiple challenges pre and post migration. It's very important to take into consideration of why and how they arrived at their final destination, the host country in Europe, or I mean, we are concentrating in Europe, of course, but in the globe, their migratory journey and beyond that. Once settled in their final destination, the whole integration process can be very difficult, challenging, and tiring. Migrant women and girls are impacted by poverty, destitution, unemployment, discrimination, legal dependency on a spouse, social, religious, cultural, and peer pressure within their communities. And this is in the host community. How we work and we support migrant women to build independence, awareness, and confidence, develop the skills, connection, and opportunities. While we work at EU level advocating for migrant women's rights, our members who are grassroots organizations work directly with migrant women on the ground at local and national level. What we do is actually we support migrant women and girls at two capacities. We support our members, and then we also have projects where we involve migrant women themselves. So what we do is actually for our members, we provide a lot of trainings, capacity building trainings. We help them with securing funding by bringing them as partner into our projects, but also when we are applying or partnering in other projects, we really would like our members to be involved. And what we do is we really like support them one-to-one. For example, we supported some of our migrants to start becoming partners in new projects. We know that it's really difficult for grassroots organizations to be securing funding or kind of getting through the EU funding because it's quite difficult. So what we even do is like we sit behind our laptops when we open peak numbers with them, or we do budget financial supporting. And we see some of our members that has become now independent and partnering in EU projects and other projects. So this is the kind of example I'm giving you in terms of how we support our members. The kind of projects that we support migrant women, I gave you one of the projects we did called Agency Vote with Her. It was a European funded project. It was in a collaboration with FemLens and with several national and local organizations in EU member states. The main objective of agency was to increase political participation of women with migrant background in the context of the European Parliament elections in 2024. In the period from May until November 2023, the change makers, I mean, we call them change makers, but the migrant women who participated in the project, there were 50 women from diverse backgrounds in 14 EU member states who participated in this program. They went through some online training and in-person bootcamp training on how to get familiarized with photo voice, how to build their campaigns, and how to build exhibitions and different events, so they can inform other women in the community to take part in the election. And it's really important because often we see migrant women who, even the second generation, don't take part in this kind of really important events. And for us, it's really important to build their capacities to take part and to bring political changes. In the period from January until May 2024, the women participated in the agency, organized their own campaigns, combining photo voice and documentary photography within their own localities. And also we had one main exhibition at the European Parliament where all the change makers came and presented their projects at EU level. Then we have, right now, currently, we have a project called RESA. This is to build the capacity of migrant women-led organizations. RESA meaning root in Greek, it's funded by SERV, and it will support and strengthen 99 small-scale grassroots organizations across all EU member states over the course of 4 years. Through 3 funding cycles, the project will deliver financial support and tailored capacity building to empower grassroots actors working with and for women in migrant background, women from migrant background, and those, especially those in the most isolated and under-resourced setting. As I mentioned before, a lot of grassroots organizations, they work purely on a voluntary basis. We have a lot of members who actually work 24/7 on voluntary basis. They don't get any kind of funding, but it's something that they want to help migrant women to build independence because of their own experiences. So in RESA, in every cycle of RESA, we will fund 15 micro, 12 small, and 6 medium grants. And through the capacity building of RESA, which will be throughout the project, we will deliver courses on EU values and rule of law, equality and women's rights, solidarity and democracy, and sustainability and resilience. So these are the kind of courses that we will be delivering for the organizations who we will be funding. For more information, you can go to our website. The first cycle funding is open. So if you know any grassroots women-led organizations in your area, please encourage them to apply for this funding. I would like to kind of echo what my colleagues in previous presentations said for the migrant unaccompanied minors. This really applies for migrant women also. It's really important that we should support migrant women at different capacities. For example, providing safe spaces. I will not go into this because I think my colleague next in the next presentation will go more into providing safe spaces to migrant women by involving them through different projects like EPIQ, of course. It's what I want to mention is it's really important to involve them as beneficiaries, not as tokens, because in a lot of projects we see that they bring migrant women as tokens, and this is really frustrating for us as migrant women-led network, but as a migrant women ourselves also, I mean myself also. It's really important that if you're building projects to take childcare into consideration, like I said, a lot of migrant women don't have access to resources like childcare, even if they want to be involved in the projects or building their capacities. Also, it's really important to remember that many migrant women have skills, qualification. In many cases, they're highly educated. So in a lot of projects that we are involved, or what we hear from our members, that in a lot of situations, migrant women are treated as if they need to learn and they don't know anything. And this is something we are really promoting, that we come with a lot of skills. We have a lot of background education. So when we are involve us directly in the project, not just as someone that we need to learn. Of course, maybe we need to learn the language, but we have a lot of skills to also give back to projects we are involved in, or to the organizations and so on. So I will end my presentation here. If you have any questions, any comments, I'm very willing to take them or listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frohar. We could see you and listen to you perfectly. And we have been sharing some links to the project and to the organization, European Network of Migrant Women have the very different comprehensive support projects for migrant women, as you said, because we're a network of over 50 grassroots organizations of providing this support at the different capacities, including the RISA, which is, and you mentioned that there is the call opened. So indeed, for attendees, if you know anybody who would be a good fit for it, do not hesitate to spread the word. We will do it also at our end after the webinar. And thank you for the recommendations, the direct involvement of migrant women directly in the project from the beginning, not as a token, but active participants, to take into consideration specific needs like the childcare. This indeed is essential. We have seen that also ourselves, also the safe spaces that indeed we are going to elaborate a bit more in a minute, and to recognize that they've been with knowledge, with capacity, with experiences, with the skills that indeed, as you mentioned, it was also highlighted by previous speaker like Juan with for the unaccompanied minors. They need to be part of their own pathway and co-creation, because they must have a say on that. We don't have any question or reaction from the moment, I think, but if you can still stay around until we close, perhaps we have more after the last intervention and then the wrap-up panel. Thank you again, Flohan, for being with us. And so with that, which feels like a perfect introduction for the next last speaker, definitely not last, Eleni Descalo from Come Up organization, a pickup partner, who is going to present what has been a recognized good practice to support this, that was already mentioned by Flohan, an essential part of this capacity, friendly spaces for women and girls, the concrete case in Greece. So Eleni, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Patricia. We're very happy to be here, and I'm very happy that I will continue from everything that Flohan mentioned. So I guess you can see the presentation, right? And I can change the slides.
Yes.
Everything is okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
it
right.
is.
So I'm very happy to be here with you and share a very good practice we're very proud of at CMOP. And we are going to talk about, I'm going to talk to you about the friendly space for women and girls that we operate in the area of Neophylia, which is very close to Piraeus in Athens. So it was launched actually at the end of January last year, 2024, and was part of an EU project called Safe Hat Holding Safe Spaces for Women and Girls Empowerment. The aim of the project was to facilitate the social and labor integration of third country national women and girls that were facing vulnerable situation. Since then, and after the finalization of that project, the space was and actually still is funded by other relevant EU initiatives that promote as well women's integration. So why a space only for women and girls? Let's see each of the three, let's say, regions behind this decision one by one. So the first is that a space which is only for women and girls can ensure the physical and emotional safety of both women and girls. And why do we say this? That we need always to keep in mind that, not for all of them, but very often for some women and some girls that have gone through particularly difficult and challenging situations, the presence of a man could trigger a lot of problematic memories. So it's also a space that women coming from very difficult backgrounds can express themselves freely because they are together with other women. Also, it will allow women and girls to be themselves. without criticisms, without social expectations. We need to keep in mind that patriarchy is very, very present. It's still alive. We've seen it, we face it, and we wanted to create and to maintain a space where girls and women feel free to express themselves, that they can say whatever they feel like they want to express without fearing what another person from a different gender could say. And also, it provides opportunities and conditions for mutual support and the creation of women's networks. Coming back to what Froher said before, it is a space for women from the women themselves. So we've seen during this whole time that the women that come to the safe space have created a very strong bonds among each other. And of course, they fully participate and they exchange ideas with the group of experts that runs the safe space about what they're going to do next. So they are very, let's say, what can I say? They're very active in how the safe space is run. So what exactly is for us the friendly space for women and girls? So it's a space that facilitates access to knowledge and skills for women and adolescent girls. It is a space that supports their psychosocial well-being. As I just mentioned, it supports the creation of social networks between the women, but also among the women and society. It is a place where they can have access to information and resources. Our aim always, we keep in mind that we want to reduce the risk of gender-based violence or domestic violence. It is a reference point for the women and the girls concerning their relation and their linkages with other civil society organizations and service providers in the wider area and region of Athens. And of course, it is a space where women feel safe. They are encouraged to use their voices and to speak up for their rights and their needs. Our team is made of one psychologist, one social worker, one coordinator, one interpreter who speaks both Arabic and French for now, but this is also open based on the majority of women that participate in the safe space. I mean, the need for the languages combinations every time, and one pedagogue for childcare. Coming back also to what Froher mentioned, one of the things, the very important things and gaps that we realized is that there is a very big need in all NGOs, organizations, associations that provide support to migrant women, childcare. This was a gap, and we've been trying to take care of it. So what we do in the safe space, there are a key group of groups of activities that we organize per month. So we have the personal empowerment activities. These could be arts-based, like, for example, music, theater, drawing, discussions, in order to understand what women need and what they want and what is their perspective. We have cognitive empowerment activities, like, for example, we regularly map the services provided at local level. We have information sessions from other service providers, like, for example, concerning issues related to legal aspects, to nutrition, sexual and reproductive health services, meetings with other women-led initiatives or workshops related to skills development. We organize psychosocial empowerment activities. We can have coffee or tea ceremonies. We can have storytelling seminars, cooking, crafts making. We also provide individualized psychosocial support services for survivors of GBV, and of course, a number of activities related to socio-civic empowerment. These could be either job counseling, trainings for the creation of women's network, or initiatives led by women, information on political participation, and other activities. As I mentioned before, it's very important. We always discuss with the women that come to the safe space. So we try to keep in mind what are their needs and their expectations. We organize, you can see here, for example, an image from our schedule for this month. The safe space and the women meet on Mondays and Thursdays from 2 o'clock in the afternoon until 5 o'clock. So the schedule is organized per month. If somebody asks, what about men? Men are very important in this case. We believe that every safe space for women should take men's point of view and cooperation under consideration. Why? Because they are a very important, let's call them stakeholders in this. Men can influence other community members, and even if we see that within their family's space, they play a very important role for women's participation. So sometimes, again, we need to take under consideration that we are living in a very patriarchal society. So we need to have men with us, not against us. They can support and provide actual and practical support to women in order for them to be able to participate in the activities and the initiatives. Through this, men can also be trained on gender and rights issues. They can contribute into spreading awareness of the safe spaces within their community and the other community members at their local level. And of course, they can also themselves participate in actions that they promote gender equality. So we think that they should play an important role as well. The guiding principles and the guiding approaches that we have for the safe space, first of all, it's empowerment. The aim is to empower women and girls to take control of their lives and of their environment. In order to do this, we have to identify first and then address the unequal power relations to make sure that they have equal access to information and services, and to promote their abilities to claim their rights. Such an empowering environment should always promote a sense of ownership and belonging. At the same time, it should remain an inclusive space. Women and girls, as I said and I mentioned before, are involved in the design, in the implementation, in the monitoring, and the evaluation of every activity taking place. Solidarity, and what we mean by that is that a space should provide support, encouragement, guidance, inspiration in order to promote the exchange and cooperation among women and between them, I mean, and also between the women and the people that the experts that run the safe space. Of course, they are encouraged to connect with other women. We organize or participate in activities in friendly space, or we can participate as well in social exchange efforts. For example, we can participate in local activities to advocate or to disseminate messages against gender-based violence, etc. Accountability is another very important principle. So all of the services, all of the activities of the safe space are designed to guarantee the safety and confidentiality of women and girls. They are encouraged to share their experiences and concerns. They know from second one that there is confidentiality, and support from the spaces staff is always empathetic. And of course, from any other organization that may participate in any activity. We make sure to get feedback from women and girls about everything, about the space, about the services provided, about the activities that we participate and we organize. And we always inform about what's coming up. Inclusion. The staff of the safe space is committed to promote diversity, is committed to improve the way that both women and girls access, participate, and shape the services provided. The staff must always demonstrate unbiased and inclusive attitudes, beliefs, their way of life, us and you hierarchies are avoided. The space is open to every woman, regardless of age, nationality, work, marital status, legal status, religion, and of course, collaboration. The friendly space promotes and leverages relationships that expand the capacity of women to participate, negotiate, influence, control, and hold accountable the individuals and the institutions that affect their lives. I can share some of the photos. As you can understand, we cannot show faces. These are photos from activities that have been organized in the past in the safe space. And before I finish, I would like to, I think it's important to let you know of the key lessons that we have learned during this year and a half that we have the safe space running. So, number one, cultural mediators are a very, very essential and important part of for such spaces. When we have women and girls, people from diverse cultural backgrounds and languages that need to come together, cultural mediators play a key role in the understanding and collaboration, both among the women themselves, but also between the women and the staff of the space. Continuous evaluation and needs assessment. It is very, very important for both of them to be organized regularly, because we need to make sure that whatever we organize responds to the women's needs. Collaboration and support from other actors, institutions, the municipality, the local level, they're very crucial in order to accept the safe space, in order for us to be able to refer when needed the women for a number of other activities that they have to do, for expertise exchange, and in order for the initiative to be sustainable. Also, bilateral meetings, co-hosting activities, open days, and regular updates from the space help build a supportive network around it. And also it helps very, very much to connect the safe space to the wider web of local services. External actors that wish to contribute as facilitators should be informed and must be informed in advance about the methodology we follow and about the core principles and the rules of the safe space. This is very important whenever we need to collaborate with an external actor. This plays a very important role. Sometimes, and we have done that in the past, a prior agreement of understanding and collaboration can be very helpful when it is signed. Flexibility. I think for me, it's number one. And when we talk about flexibility, we talk about for both the staff and the organization. Activities could be very well organized and planned, but they could shift. We need to take care, as I said before, of the women's needs, their wishes, their attendance that can be also changing, external circumstances, strikes, personal challenges, other obligations, and it's okay. But this is not very easy, as it sounds, to be flexible. Providing snacks during activities, transportation tickets, hygiene products for the women, diapers for the babies maybe. These are things that are not always taken under consideration, but we've seen in practice that they can encourage the woman's participation in the safe space very much, because they feel like their immediate needs are taken care of. The development of specific skills through the activities is also very important, but we should do this keeping it balanced. And what we mean by that is that we must combine serious, let's say, or more important topics with more fun activities, because women must be kept engaged and interested. Staff should always be updated on laws, regulations, opportunities. At least in Greece, things change very quick concerning regulation and laws in relation to migration. So we need to stay alert. Also, the friendly space must uphold all confidentiality rules. And also we need to keep in mind that we should protect privacy, of course, and at the same time, we should offer opportunities for women to engage with the local community, to connect the women with other organizations, to encourage them to participate in local events and festivals, and encourage at the same time a more outward approach. And finally, although we talked about addressing immediate needs like food and shelter and how crucial this is, there are some long-term needs: education, mental health support, employment, social integration, and these things must be taken under consideration, because they may undermine as well the sustainable change. So if we focus only on crisis response and emergency responses without planning the future, this may lead women into becoming even more vulnerable and dependent. And of course, trust and safety must come first. Relationship building is very important within the safe spaces, and they are, to us, far more valuable than providing immediate solutions. Women must feel accepted, must feel heard before they can fully engage, and this may take time. This requires patience, empathy, and the staff must also manage their own emotional responses to traumatic narratives. So group activities are a solution that we've seen that can be proved really effective in fostering this sense of safety and building participation and solidarity among the women. So these are some of the key resources. Of course, as Patricia mentioned before, we will share the presentation. And I really hope that I gave you just a very, general and quick idea of our way of approaching a safe space, and of the lessons that we have learned in the last 1.5 years that we have run the safe space. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Laura. It was, I'm sure that you could speak for hours about it, but I found it already really detailed and really informative, all these principles that apply not only internally, but also to all the actors with whom you engage. So they need also to adhere to it. I found that point something that perhaps sometimes escape our mind, but it's not only about this beautiful practice and to create safe space internally, but also the ecosystem around it and the role of men on it. So thank you very much, Laura. I congratulate you in this practice because it's really remarkable. And I, with that last sentence of creating the trust and the safety before the solution comes, and to have the flexibility to really address the real needs and the permanent feedback loop. There are really many things to take into account. All right, we are approaching the end of this webinar. What I wanted to do as a bit of sort of wrap up, but still some minutes to perhaps pinpoint some ideas and to put the four speakers into thinking mode for our EPICAP project. That, as we were saying, it's about to start what we call the social experimentation parts of the pilots. And I think that in a way or another, you all have spoken about pilots, about co-design, about testing. So what I wanted is to invite the four of you. So Juan, if I can see you still, all of you, connected, yes, Juan, Ursa, Frohar, and Eleni, and to ask you, of course, based on your experience and the concrete projects and topics that you've been addressing today in this, let's say, two blocks, what would you recommend to local actors, so those that are working in integrating services, initiatives, etc., on the ground? In the case of EPICAP, we have the community of practices that are multi-actor, like the same at the Living Labs that you are working with, Juan, so public authorities, migrant organizations, NGOs, etc. So that when they are testing a service, a new initiative, which is not for a particularly type of migrant women, there are for different, of course, communities, for different type of migrant, but they still take into account the particular needs of the minors in the case of one, and also in the case of migrant women and girls. So how to do this not only in principle, but also effective in practice, which I know it's very difficult question, also because sometimes we are speaking about emergency and other times into something with more long-term. But still, our partners and many others are looking at how we test and develop something new. This is for a large number of people, but still we need to have the gender dimension, we need to have the minor dimension. So do you have any recommendation for the context of how this can be tested in a small scale project like EPICAP? And perhaps we go in the same order as you intervened in the morning. You want Juan first?
Okay. Sure. I think that firstly, I agree with all the presentators today. I think that we have lots of points in connection. So this narrative today has been great. I mean, I'm very thankful for all of your presentations as well. And I think that it's very difficult to actually tell people who work in the real environments what's best, because we are here in the university. So it's a different story. I mean, actually, it's we the ones who have to hear, I guess. This is my recommendation for my own community. Is like, let's hear more to those practitioners who really know how to act in emergencies on the one hand, but also to identify those gaps that will determine what actions will you take for a long-term, let's say, inclusion. So the only, more than advice, I would say that there are some principles that maybe we should take care into account. First of all, this continuity between child protection and also the migratory status. I guess that's something that we really have to reflect on. And to see how we are going to connect both ideas, because they are at the same time children and at the same time migrants. And there is no one element above the other. Let's say, I mean, that's what I can see. The other thing is like co-creation, as we have all discussed here, designing and co-designing all the interventions, but also research processes as well with the community, with all the, let's say, local actors and stakeholders and partnerships, etc. So, because as we were mentioning here, I mean, to particular needs, we need tailored responses as well to those needs. So, and that means a lot of time of taking into consideration what's happening in reality. That's the and another thing has to do with the capacity that girls or children in general or migrant women have in general. So I think that there is also this idea that they cannot move forward. I mean that the capacities has to have to be built in a sort of program, but there is no recognition of the previous experiences, of the previous capacities that they are bringing towards Europe. You know, so that is something also that we have to consider. And just the last point that I would like to mention is because of the other talks after Ursa and me, it was like how important is to look at also unaccompanied migrant girls, because that's a very particular group of people. And what has happened, at least in Latin America, because at least in the South Cone, gender is much more diffused. Let's say, I mean, the gender is much more or less balanced in terms of the influxes. So you can have a lot of sign what of 50% men, 50% women. I mean, I'm talking about children. So the responses are also different, and the motivations are also different. For in some cases, adolescent pregnancy on the one hand, also gender motivations like being trans, being bisexual or lesbian. Those are actually some parts of the motivation that they have to move around the South Cone towards Chile, for example, or towards North America. So this is a bit of an invisible here in Europe. I know that 90% of the people, 90% of the unaccompanied minors are men. But what happens with the 10%? I mean, most of the publications and the research processes that are being carried out are normally oriented to unaccompanied minor as a general group, but there's a need of a distinction between boys and girls because the necessities are different and the motivations are also different. This is what I have seen in South America, but I think that it can apply also here. I mean, that there are gender motivations for unaccompanied migration, and we are not taking that into consideration here. And
thank you very
thank
much, Juan. Yeah, that's a very important topic, and thank you for bringing also the reality from South America. That indeed it might be a different type of migration patterns than those that come from Africa or from Middle East, and the invisible groups that need a specific recognition into the process. Ursa, would you like to add something perhaps that has not been covered already?
I think it has been extensively covered, so I will be brief and short. This is something that was touched upon already by several presentations and Madeleina's comment. And I think that when planning anything, any services, any supporting activities, without the participation of the group to which this is targeted, any kind of plan can be basically void and none. We see in practice, at least in my country, that the participation of the group, whether it be women, migrant children, migrant working men, it doesn't really matter. Their participation in any kind of local planning, policy planning is really lacking. And they're often seen more as objects to which the policies will, someone said tokens to which the policies will apply, and not subjects that really need the support and that in the end the services are for. So without taking their voices and the participation into account, I don't think that really any kind of policy practice project can be implemented in an effective way, as people will not see as something that will really serve them or benefit them in the long term, and will not internalize maybe the effects or the benefits of the service as well.
Thank you, Ursa, for pointing out the importance of the direct involvement, so that they really can feel the ownership of the process and the usefulness of what they are involved in and dedicating their time. And as you said, and also Flo has said, many times this is fully volunteering and is not duly recognized or done in a tokenistic way. Flohar, is there anything that you would like to add, comment that has not been mentioned yet?
I think all my colleagues kind of mentioned everything. I echo what they say, especially Eleni. I mean, thank you so much for that great presentation. Really reflected what we experience with with our members at grassroots level. It's really important to provide that safe space for migrant women and girls, and especially for migrant girls and unaccompanied minors. Especially now that the implementation of the new pact is coming. And I think it's really important that we consider those safe spaces for unaccompanied girls in the situation of, I don't know how you can do it at the national level. We are working on this. We are right now working at EU level to see like the safety of women, vulnerable women in these detention camps. But for us, it's really important that unaccompanied girls are really looked after, because they're, like you mentioned, Johan, that their experience are quite different to unaccompanied boys. But often these girls go through a lot of, let's say, negative experience through their migratory route to Europe, sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, and so on. So it's really important that once they arrive to the shores of Europe, that they are provided these spaces, that they feel safe, they feel protected. And often we hear that these spaces are not provided for them. You again can go to our website. I did a research a few years ago, and there are experiences of real life stories of migrant girls and women in these centers in Spain, in Italy, and in Greece. So this is really important. And also what I want to mention is that, as Elena mentioned, that when we are doing projects like EPIC, it's really important to think of the long-term strategy. That means working really closely at the national level with municipalities, with other stakeholder service providers like social care services, education services, health services, because often they overlook the challenges that migrant women face. They see everyone on the same level, but of course their challenges are very different. And projects like EPIQ can really help to build those relationships, to build awareness at the national, local level to these service providers on how to handle unaccompanied minors, but also migrant women's needs and challenges as well. Thank you. And I'm so sorry, I must leave in
yes,
1 minute. So I will listen to you, Eleni, and then I have to leave. I'm very sorry.
Do not worry, we're about to wrap up, but the conversation is so interesting that I don't want to cut anybody. But yeah, it's essential to build this long-term relationship with stakeholders so that they don't overlook the concrete challenges faced by different types of migrant population, like migrant girls and women, but also the unaccompanied minors. Eleni, Laura, would you like to add something?
Very quick. Thank you. And because I totally agree with all the three speakers. The other challenge that I just want us to keep in mind is that after so many years of having the so-called migration and refugee crisis in Europe, now we must also be prepared to face the skepticism from the migrants themselves. And we've seen that in the last months that we've been working in order to create our community of practice, and I'm talking about the example of Greece. Very often, the number one question that we hear from migrant-led associations of migrant organizations, etc., is like, we've been through so difficult situations here after we arrive, after we cross the borders, that we don't trust you anymore. And this mistrust is towards everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're a state service, whether you're an NGO or CSO or something. So this is also very important to keep in mind when we want to create something new and we want to involve migrants. That's it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura, for pointing out indeed growing skepticism, so that also to be considered. And I imagine that again, like to create or recreate the trust, which is something that, of course, take time. That doesn't happen overnight. Thank you very much to the four of you, Laura, Ursa, Juan, Frohar. It's really been incredible to have you and this presentation. If time doesn't allow to go deeper, I think we really had a lot of ideas and food for thought, and hopefully we will keep being in touch with you, disseminating what is coming also from your projects. Juan and Ursa will be happy. Ursa, you have to send us the invitation to the final event that you are doing for the coast, and really looking forward to continue cooperation. I would like just to hand it for the last golden minute, perhaps to our project coordinator, if I can see you, Mohamed Mustafa from ALDA, if you would like to say just the concluding words are for you.
No, because we are already running off time. I just would like to join the appreciation of the speakers. It was really interesting to hear all of these insights, because now, like, we officially closing this learning phase of the project, because we've been learning a lot with some capacity building, field visits, the COPs that were traveling together and learning from each others. And so far, we engage with directly more than 195 various stakeholders from civil society, public sector, private sector, and education institution. And this is just the direct members of our COPs in these 6 EU countries. And we are really full of energy to what is coming next, because now we are meeting for the midterm steering committee in 2 weeks in the city of Oberhausen, one of our city members of the project, in which we will start the true pilot actions. After all of this experimentation process, inviting some external stakeholders like you to learn from and to exchange, as we also try to EPICUP is all about bottom-up approach and putting the migrants community at the center of creating policies. And this is what we're trying, even with our pilot action approaches, to be like that. We're always inviting different stakeholders, but putting the perspective of the migrant and the living experience of the migrant community as the center. So thank you again, Juan, Ursula, Frohar, and Eleni. Thanks, Patricia, for moderating this amazing discussion today, and Marisol for the technical. And thank you all for participation. And I hand the mic again to Patricia, maybe for the last bye-bye. Thank you.
Just to thank all participants for their time. Feel free to reach out to us if there is anything you would like to let us know, and for future events, always happy to hear from you, and wish you a lovely day ahead. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.